This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Here's Stephen Sinclair from Jackson's on George.
In general, Westholme, I use several items on the menu from them. I always look to source products for their flavour. And with Westholme, I think they deliver that 100%. Australian Wagyu, in particular, Westholme is world class. Westholme is recognised for their quality all over the world. And then that's why, and when I tried it, and I absolutely love the flavour. This is, why I decided to put them on the menu.
Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
I love this about my job, and I love really being around people, and that's the luxury I have, because I have a lot of people and chefs, and I have so many different cultures, and I keep learning. I never stop learning.
Hey everybody, Dani Valent here with you for an episode of Dirty Linen, our food and hospitality podcast. We chat about all kinds of things in the world of food, drinks, dining, eating, gathering around the table. There is never any shortage of things to talk about. Today's guest is Sven Ullrich. We are heading to Sydney, where Sven is the executive chef of the Hyatt Regency, and he's overseeing a new seafood concept at the hotel's Sailmaker restaurant. I'm always really interested to chat to people who work in the hotel dining scene. It's certainly a different landscape here than it is perhaps internationally. But Sven, welcome to Dirty Linen.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me definitely on the show today, and I'm super excited to chat to you.
First of all, just introduce us to the Hyatt Regency and the dining offerings there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been here for now 7 years. We are one of the 5-star properties right in the CBD on the Darling Harbour side. We have 3 amazing restaurants, really, and we have a total of 5 bars. So we have totally different styles of food. We have a pub. If you look at your gastro pub meal, your really upgraded kind of schnitzel and gourmet burgers. We have an amazing rooftop bar that has more of a sharing tapas style concept, where the luxury plays a large role. I have beautiful lobster popcorn as an example, and then we have our international restaurant downstairs, which is really featuring dishes from all around the world, which has from Thai dishes over some Spanish tapas, over some French items, and some beautiful local Australian products. And then of course the restaurant we're going to talk about today, which is Sailmaker, and that's our sustainable seafood concept.
So interesting. And so how many staff do you oversee?
We have 75 chefs in this kitchen, and we have, one huge element of this hotel, of course, is our event side. So we have 2 giant conference rooms. I don't mention them because we will talk about restaurants today, but this is the engine room of this hotel. This is really the money maker. This is what we're famous for. We are a corporate hotel, so we have a huge corporate business, and that's where a lot of chefs, so 24 of those chefs are just working on that event side. The rest are on the restaurants.
Yeah, look, I'm really interested to talk about all the different aspects of what you do there, because it is really interesting for people to understand the big machine of a 5-star hotel. And, I suppose we always like to talk about career possibilities and pathways on this podcast as well. So it's interesting for people to know about all the different kinds of things you could learn if you're working at such a hotel. I mean, what's the culture like? What sort of pathways do you offer people? Do you tend to have a lot of internationals? Is there a lot of people that stick around for a while, or is it quite a transient workforce? How does it all feel to be there?
So here's the thing: hotel industry is very different, right? So we are not celebrity chefs. You don't see in newspaper articles, what the hotel chef came up with, or we are really looked down from the restaurant side, which is perfectly fine. I have no problem with that, right? We have all those restaurant chefs, the Brent Savage of the world, the Sean Connerlys, the Neil Perrys, and these are all the celebrity, the forefront of culinarians here in the city. And the hotels are operating very differently. Like we have I always say we have 90% managing and 10% cooking, right? Well, because we're managing big brigades of people, and we have a huge corporate responsibilities. Hyatt is a worldwide brand. We are trading on the stock market. We have responsibilities of making sure that healthy and making sure food safety, for example, is one of the big priorities. I have 39 reports that we have to conduct in terms of traceability of food safety, right? When the chicken arrives at the loading dock, when the chicken is cooked, how the temperatures, when the chicken is cooled down, and when the chicken is finally served to the guests. So there's a very different aspect of a hotel chef versus a restaurant chef. And I think you asked for the people, and we work, of course, as any other restaurant hotel with international students, where we work with Australian people who are local here, who have Australian passport. We have a variety. I actually, in the culinary field, I have 14 different nationalities that we're working with, which is great because it helps me to put authentic dishes on the menus. And the beautiful thing, of course, of having 75 chefs in my brigade is I can use that as my inspiration, and I learn so much from them. And I think authenticity is a big important part of a hotel. Look, I serve breakfast. Don't forget that there's 0 restaurants in Sydney that serve breakfast, right? These are all lunch or dinner places. I have my biggest outlet in my hotel, which serves around 600 on average every morning, because we are a 900 room hotel, and we have 600 people in the morning that want to have breakfast. And these are international guests. I have Americans, I have Australians, I have Chinese, I have Japanese, I have a lot of Asian cultures, right, who eat different than the Indians, for example, who request very different food. So I deal with very different. I'm not saying it's harder. I'm just saying it's very different than a restaurant chef. And that's, of course, the careers that we discuss with our chefs, right? We ask them, what do you want to be? I'm going to use one example real quick. Sorry, I do all the talking here, but you asked me 3 questions in one. So I have one chef in my pastry who just finished with me his apprenticeship. And we had this really long career chat, right? And I said to him, look, right now you're on the crossroads. You have basically 3 choices. You can stay within the hotel industry, become a managerial chef, right? You could actually wear a suit because we're not really in the kitchens anymore. You can go into the restaurant side and learn from the best, right? Goes to the Key, go to the Cafe Sydney, go to the Arias, the Encores of the world, and learn that the top-notch chefing, or you go into the route of having your own business, right? So I gave him that option, right? And said, look, they're very different careers. And he said, look, I want to be the best in my business. I want to be the best chef. And so we sent him to Bentley. So he now starts next week. And it was great. And I love it. And he's going to go a very different career now that I have. And I think that's the important part.
So interesting. And I mean, do you think, you talk about that crossroads for this young chef, like, do you feel like he's on that path now? Like, is it going to be really hard for him to jump back into the hotel world? Is it sort of like you have to choose your path at a certain point?
No, I think you do when you cross your levels, right? So I think you can very easily go back from the high-end restaurants to the hotel world. I think it's going to be very difficult to go. If you have a 10-year career in a hotel, let's say Shangri-La, Four Seasons, you worked at all those places, you want to go back into the Keys of the world or the Aria? No chance, because you lost that train of really intense cooking. And the best example, Dani, is always my best friend, who is a Michelin star chef. And really cooks amazingly well. I mean, there's a reason why he has 2 Michelin star chefs. But when he came and visited me and we had a beautiful glass of wine together, we actually realized that we both could not do each other's jobs. He said he was amazed on all the managerial administrative sides that I do every day. And we have 39 food log reports that we have to complete every day in order to trace our food. And he, of course, does none. He doesn't have a HACCP certification in place, but yet he runs one of the best restaurants in Switzerland. So this is the exciting part I feel about the chefing world. You have to know what you want. Look, I'm home at dinner time. He is not. He's in his restaurant because he's scared to lose a Michelin star. So it's just so different.
Yeah, so different. Well, I mean, Sven, how did you get on your path? Like, take us back and tell us how the steps to ending up in Sydney at Hyatt Regency.
Yeah, that's a long one because it started so long ago, right? In 1988 with an apprenticeship, and I started an apprenticeship in a hotel, which of course, it gave me all the luxuries a hotel has. For example, we have a stewarding department who cleans the kitchen. If you look at the high end restaurants here, the chefs have to clean the kitchen, right? So I really, I've been brought up in a hotel environment, so I was very quickly used to it. We have a butchering department who broke down all the pieces of carcasses into, it was a four people strong butchery back in the days that we had. Of course, things have changed a little bit now, but look, I really wanted to work in the best hotels in the world, and there are a lot of lists, hotel rankings out there from some really renowned companies who really ranked them. And I was always very competitive and I wanted to be in one of the best. So my journey took me to the Bel Air in Los Angeles because back then it was the number one ranked hotel in the world. And then I went to the Waldorf in New York, the Waldorf Astoria, because it has such a big reputation. So I actually only worked in my whole career once in a restaurant. I've done my entire career in hotels. And I traveled around until I ended up in Queensland, in Sanctuary Cove, where I joined Hyatt for the very first time in 2000. And there I had that conversation with my chef, who said to me, look, you're here, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? And they set me a path. So Hyatt is a great company to really lay down a roadmap for your career. And I said, yeah, I want to be exec chef. It was chef de cuisine back then. And they provided all the training. And then I took my first exec chef back in my hometown in Hamburg, Germany. So I did a full circle. I did my apprenticeship in Hamburg, Germany, and then I went back to it as my first exec chef position. And then Hyatt transferred me around. I mean, that's what we do. We want to make sure you get exposed, you learn different cuisines. And they moved me to Florida. I was in Tampa right now, which got terribly hit by a hurricane twice within 2 weeks, and then went to Hawaii. And I spent 6 years at the Hyatt Regency in Waikiki.
And then you moved to Sydney from there?
Yep. And then I got a transfer, and they needed help here. And, it's Waikiki. I always done really in my career large hotels. Waikiki is a 1,200 room hotel. And then the opportunity came in Sydney, and they said, hey, we need a bit of help here and work. Would you be willing to move? And I said, absolutely. And here I am. And it's been now 7 years that I've been in Sydney.
So interesting. And Sven, what's your view on the way that hotels fit into the dining landscape in Australia? You've got this experience at all different sorts of cities around the world. Like, what's it like in Sydney to be working at one of the 5-star hotels?
Yeah, it's a challenge, Dani. It's we're facing a roadblock, right? Which is a mental roadblock of Australians that hotels are overpriced, that hotels are not having great restaurants, and that's very different in some Asian countries. And it's interesting because when you look at Japan, I had a task force assignment in Tokyo, spent some time there with the Hyatt brands just to understand the definition of Regency Park and Grand. And when I was in Tokyo, I really understood that hotels are really mandatory for weddings. Okay, so if you don't get married in a hotel, in a 5-star hotel, you're really, you're not part of the upper class. You're not really have made it. So they have an amazing reputation of and that's not only the Hyatt. It's all the 5-star hotels in Tokyo. When you see how they operate their weddings, it's crazy. It is like it's a bit like a speed dating where the wedding couples come in and you have all the wedding planners sitting on tables with all the materials of the tablecloth and the menus and they come and sit down and you have 30 minutes before the next one comes and they discuss your wedding. So they have been able to create this 5-star hotel reputation of a must-have for your weddings. And here we are, and we have some amazing restaurants. I think when you look at some smaller boutique hotels, they really started now to have restaurants that are really reputable and serving great food. But mainly they're outsourced. Even if you look at the Hilton, our neighbor next door, they use Luke Mangan for their glass house, right? So there's a lot of restaurants who are just scared, or a lot of hotels who are scared to really operate restaurants.
Yeah, so interesting. So I suppose this does bring us around to Sailmaker. Is Sailmaker your attempt to do a non-hotel restaurant in a hotel?
It is. Don't tell anyone, please. I hope nobody's listening. No. No. Look, it is, because it is a restaurant that we use for breakfast, right? So here are the headwinds that we had to face, but we are fencing it off. We are using our show kitchen element to show the guests that how it's prepared fresh, and we want it to be different. Look, we have St. Peter's here in Sydney, which is a worldwide known fish restaurant, and what he does with seafood is out of this world. I admire him. I could not do it. We don't want to compete with him, but what I wanted to do is really handpick our vendors. I wanted to tell a story of the big debate of wild caught versus sustainably farmed. What's the right thing? I wanted to raise a bit of talking point about the oceans being overfished and that we have to make some choices now in order. I got two, I call them teenagers, they're actually young adults, 23 and a 21-year-old at home, still living with me, of course, in Sydney. So I wanted to make sure that their kids have still the same amazing seafood on offer that I have. And you've seen the prices, you've seen how they skyrocketed. Flathead used to be a cheap fish and chip, kind of fish. Now it's a high-end luxury item. So we have to make sure that we do the right choices. And what drives me mad is that we as customers have such a big power. When you go to Woolies, it's what we buy, Woolies will stock, not the other way around. Don't ever forget. If you wouldn't buy it, Woolies wouldn't stock it. So that's the kind of conversation I wanted to spark at the dinner table. And yes, we wanted to compete. We have high quality seafood that is sustainably farmed or wild caught, and we wanted to give the guest an amazing experience.
I think one of my main frustrations with eating seafood in restaurants in Australia is that people stick to the same species. You've got your kingfish, you've got your salmon, maybe you've got some barramundi, some tuna, but there's very little variety. I mean, is it something that are you trying to expand people's horizons in that regard to different species?
Absolutely. And we want to be true, though, to our waters, right? I'm not interested of flying in the mahi-mahi from halfway around the continent just to offer it to our guests. That's not the intention. Look, we are using a lot of seafood from New Zealand, of course, which we have to admit, right? But we also have some phenomenal products here in Australia. And it doesn't always have to come from the oceans. We have the Murray cod, right, which is a sweetwater fish, which is sustainable aquaculturally farmed, like state of the art. Okay, they're changing the riverbeds in order to make sure that the rivers are constantly flowing through the fish farm, so there's no polluting and no really contamination of the surrounding water. So it's so important to we have barramundi too, absolutely, because we have over 100 barramundi farms in Australia. Every single state of Australia has a barramundi farm except Tasmania. You have to really put it into perspective sometimes. And you said it, right? Salmon is number one, and number two is barramundi. It's the most eaten fish all around, but it's actually a very good fish too. We partnered with Humpty Doo, which is out of Northern Territory, in another, farm that really is on the forefront on barramundi harvesting. You got a few different ones to choose from, right? When you look at Cone Bay, which comes out of South Australia, they do the fishing like in Tasmania, the salmon industry, right? They have those giant, big freshwater, ocean water tanks where basically the barramundis are in. And the Northern Territory one, the Humpty Doo, is done on the land. So it's not an ocean farmed barramundi, it's a land farmed barramundi. So because the barramundi swims through both waters, right? It's salt water and fresh water. So it's actually an amazing species. I mean, we can talk about it for ages because it actually only born as a male, and then it turns 3 to 4 years into a female. So it's I mean, that's another story. But it's just, these are the kind of things that I wanted to put on the menu because we're proud of it, and we should be. Because Australia does some amazing things. I just don't think the people are educated enough, and that's the problem. And it's the offering you have. You go to Aldi, you go to Woolies, you go to Coles, there's your Tasmanian salmon, right? And when you speak to people who are not in the industry, they tell me every time, oh, it's great salmon, right? It's fantastic. And I said, no, it's actually full of colors. It's colored. If they wouldn't color it orange, it would be white in color. So it's, I think a lot of education has to be done. And I feel I have a responsibility as being a large hotel, and I want to get that message across. And I love when I have my customers who enjoy a good meal, and then they have that conversation with me and say, so should I buy wild caught or should I get farmed? And I said, you have to do both. You can't do it. Barramundi season is very short. Don't forget, we cannot get wild barramundi all year round. So in order to have it on the menu for 12 months of the year, I need to go to farm.
How do you have those conversations with your guests, Sven? Like, how do you balance your desire to educate people with people's desire to just come out for a nice meal and not think too much?
Oh, there's a bit of, look, we just started the kitchen table now, which is a interactive dinner experience where the chef comes out and has a little bit of a cooking demonstration, education, because for exactly that piece I just mentioned, look, I don't want to disturb their dinner experience, right? That's the last thing I want. But the menu is very clearly written what it's all about. So you get already a good idea. Oh my God, this is not a normal restaurant. I say exactly where the fish is from. So every item on the menu specifies if it's wild caught or farmed and where it's from. And then we have little posters within the whole restaurant that explains a little bit more about the fisheries. It explains a little bit more why we have Skull Island prawns, for example, on the menu, which are only harvested for 3 months out of the year to make sure that they're constantly growing, like making sure there's always enough prawns in the waters, and people like that, and then they start the conversation by themselves, and then they usually ask me. I always get the same question: should I buy wild caught or sustainable farmed? And it's always the same answer I have. You have to do both. It's impossible.
Well, I think people want a simple answer, and I suppose what you're saying is that you've got to go a little bit further than that to unpeel some more layers and think a bit harder about it. But I think Skull Island prawns are such a good product, and super happy to support what they're doing. So, who are your customers, Sven? Is this going to be the 5-star hotel restaurant that lures in the locals?
That's what we hope. Look, it takes time. Don't forget, it's. I always say it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We have, of course, the luxury of having over 1,000 hotel guests here. So that's my first clientele to go to. We have 80% hotel guests, but of course we need time to put it out into the market. Look, we just started that concept last year. We're now evolving into this experience. I wanted to invite people into the kitchen. That was the idea. That's why it's called the kitchen table. You bring your group, you bring a group of friends, your group of business partners, or even your colleagues, and when you want to have a good time, it's this mixture. I feel people want to have a story. I feel we're out of COVID when we came, the normal dinner restaurant experiences are a bit a thing of the past. I want to be entertained. I want to learn a little bit too, right? I want to go home and be a bit smarter than I was before. And I like a bit of theatrical kind of, things going on. So we have a dessert trolley, for example, that comes up and you choose from it and we prepare some things last minute. It's like a little journey and you have a quick 5-10 minute interaction with the chef where you can ask him every questions you want. And I think you don't normally get that. You don't see the chef or you don't have that luxury to have a chat to him.
Sounds very appealing. So Sven, I'm sure you deal with a lot of, I don't know, let's say it's an international student or somebody who's doing an apprenticeship. Like, what kinds of questions do you ask them so that they can help work out where they want to go with their career?
Yeah, look, I think it comes a lot from the inner passion. Look, we set our goals with the associates. So we have every quarter we call them the career chats, where we get a bit of a pulse on the associate and we provide feedback, right? So it's good and bad. We provide feedback on both, and that's usually where we get an idea. So when we get very passionate chefs who really are not willing to deal with an average broccoli, they pick out the nice. Then we normally have that conversation and say, hey, what's your plan? Where do you want to go? I feel you can see that pretty easily, and you have to also be quite transparent, right? And say, look, it's not a bad industry, the hotel one, but there's a lot of administrative sides that you have to do, which you might not want to do. When you look at food temperatures taken and cooling down procedures, right? We have manuals in place how to chill down food to make it food safe, and so you have to be a little bit into that too. If you're just a passionate restaurant chef, most likely you want to stand on the stove and experience with things. So we pinpoint those, and we do have hotels. Look at our sister property right next door on the beautiful harbor, our Park Hyatt. It's right opposite the Opera House. They have a headed restaurant, so they have a much, I would say, refined kind of, the word fine dining I really hate to use, but it's a more of an upscale dining. And what we do is we transfer them to those areas where they can then hone in on their skills of the higher end dining.
Yeah, I love that. So how are you feeling about summer, Sven? I think a lot of restaurants have had a pretty tough winter. Is hotel booking strong? Do you think it's going to be a great summer for Sydney?
It's. I think it's going to be exactly what we had all year, which is an up and down. I really feel. Look, we are still on the super high interest rates, right? Which all hurt all of us. Everybody that has a mortgage or pays rent, right, somehow is affected by it, and we had to make cuts. And the cuts are not coming from petrol. The cuts are not coming from cutting your insurances down. So the cuts are coming normally by your grocery shopping or by your dining out, and that affects us for sure. I feel that, look, we always say when the calendar year ends, it's a new year, and people in their minds too always think that way, right? With all the New Year's resolutions, people run into the gyms in January, right? They have the highest sign-up rates they are because everybody wants to do the right thing. So I feel we have a new momentum coming in January. I think this year will pan out the same way as it was in the past, which is really mixed. Some really strong days. I think the way of booking too is a total thing of the past. Look, I start my dinner tomorrow night in the restaurant with 20 reservations, and we usually end up around 140. So it has changed. It's no longer that people book. People go by emotions. People go by what they see. Hey, oh my God, I passed by a restaurant. I like it. It's full. I'm going to go in there. So I think it has changed a lot. But I feel there's an upwind. Absolutely. It's been a difficult year, Dani. I'm not sitting, or I'm actually sitting now. Yeah, I'm not sitting here and saying it's been an easy year. It's been a very challenging year, but I feel we're going to come quite strong out of it. So the second part of the summer will be strong.
And Sven, tell me, what do you love about what you do?
What do I love? There's so many things, and it's such a cliche to say that you never work a day. I mean, I do feel it when you work long days that you have worked, but I love the passionate ingredients that we can work with as chefs, okay? And for me, and I use this really random example here, Dani, but a pear, okay, a simple pear. People don't understand what an amazing fruit that thing is. But you know why? Because you can't get a good pear. Pear gets shipped when it's raw, and not even ripe. It does ripen during travel. If super ripe pear is soft, so it would bruise immediately. That's why you can't get a good pear in a supermarket. But if you ever had a pear that you bite into and it drips down your chin, and it actually drips on your shirt because it's so juicy, it's an amazing, totally underrated fruit. And that's what really I love about this industry. Okay, I'm the biggest advocate of saying, why buy strawberries in winter? Just stop buying them, guys, and stop only buy them in summer. Then the supermarkets will react to it. We can't have berries in winter. It's not working. So this is really, I love this about my job, and I love really being around people, and that's the luxury I have, because I have a lot of people and chefs, and I have so many different cultures, and I keep learning, right? I never stop learning. Look, we just do an Indian weddings now here, and I had to learn all that, cooking out of a tandoor oven, and it's and understand why they eat with their fingers. And it was, for me, I'm European. What? You use your hands to enjoy the meal, and when you see them and they sit in the corner and they, chef, can I use my hands, please? I mean, otherwise it doesn't taste the same. You have to understand why they're doing it and why it's so important for them. So this is really what I love. And when they, of course, the satisfaction of a great meal, right? When we have a wedding for 600 and I get a beautiful note afterwards and says, this was the best wedding food we had. Thank you so much. That is satisfaction. That gives me the motivation to get out of bed next morning.
Wow, I love it. I just can get a tiny sense of the breadth of your role and all the different people that you engage with along the way. Sven, so great to chat. Good luck with Sailmaker. I hope it finds its place in the city. And yeah, thank you for sharing all your insights with us today. It's been really, really nice to chat.
It's my pleasure, and I hope I can welcome you one day so I can show you everything I just talked about. It would be so good, because when you see it and when you feel it, then you really understand what this is all about.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Dani. Take care.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.